What's going on, everybody? You're listening to the SANE Show, the show about nothing and everything. I'm your host, Cliff, and today I have a really special guest, someone I've been wanting to have on for a while, who's also my mentor. I have the Vice President and partner of Walter Latham Entertainment, Yulonda Smith. How you doing, Yulonda?
I'm great, thank you. I hope you're well.
I am well. I'm like I said, I'm really excited to have you on and ready to get this show on the road. Really quick before we hop into things and introduce the topics, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge all of our listeners. Thank you guys for continuing to show your support, continuing to subscribe, to like, to share, comment, and do all the great stuff to help get the word out about the SANE Show. So really appreciate it, and that goes to everybody in all 40 plus countries. So thank you again for helping get the SANE Show to where it is today. And if you're listening and you don't follow the SANE Show on social media, be sure to check us on Instagram and Twitter, SANE_show, SSANE_show. And then you can find us on Facebook, The SANE Show. Again, you can find us on Facebook, The SANE Show. All right, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our topics. So today we'll be talking about Black women behind the scenes in entertainment. We're also going to talk about mentorship. Following those two topics, we'll have our interview with Yulonda so the listeners can get to learn more about you, the things that you have going on, and also get some insight into your journey. Let's go ahead and kick it off with Black women behind the scenes in entertainment.
Oh,
So
hey.
we had a conversation prior to the recording about this, and I thought it was fitting because of what you do. I thought this was a fitting topic to have a conversation about, especially in the age that we're in today and all of the great things that are happening. And obviously you've been in the game for some time now, and Black women have been in this business doing a lot of things behind the scenes, but now like they're starting to get a lot more recognition
Mm-hmm.
than they were before. And I guess from your experience, you kind of like speak to that as far as the changes that you've seen in the industry, and how Black women behind the scenes have not only receiving a lot more recognition, but also getting more opportunities in entertainment.
Right, coming from behind the curtain a little bit, if you will. It's interesting because, being in urban comedy, you'd think, well, you'd see more African American women, but you just don't see very many women, period, unless they are the comic. And one of the things I've seen change when I first started back in 2004, whenever I'd interact with someone from an agency or a studio, they would always assume I was just the assistant. And this was that way for many years, where I'd get
Mm-hmm.
something like, okay, thanks. Can you put Walter on? Or are you going to schedule the call? And when I got more involved in the business part of it, it was very interesting to see how I was received. A lot of people had a hard time. I remember one agent saying he did not want to speak with me. Why is she on the call? I remember hearing, and that almost sounds absurd to think about now in the
Right.
time that we're in. But this was just a few years ago. I remember being asked that, like, why is your girl on the call? Like, why is your assistant on the call? And being told she's the business. She is not my assistant. So coming from behind the scenes is an interesting thing. I like behind the scenes, actually. I like working behind the scenes. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
creative. I am business. I think we're coming from back there because people wanted to keep us back there. And
Mm-hmm.
women, we don't like that. You don't tell us where we're going to be.
Right.
But it is so exciting to see women like Ava, and to see that there are more people than just Oprah. Thank God for all the trail she's blazed, but that to
Mm-hmm.
see that there are women in every area of business. I mean, now I talk to African American women that are at, some of the major studios, that are
Mm-hmm.
at the streaming networks. So it's exciting to think, I'm dealing with African American women now at Hulu and at all these different places. So, even if they're starting kind of on the bottom tier at first, they're moving their way up quickly. And I remember I had a Verizon person I was working with when we first started being sponsored by them. And it was an African American woman who has now gone off and started her own agency. I work with Black
Wow.
women now who own their own PR firms. When they started off, they were on the desk at major PR firms as someone's assistant, and now they have their own. So I've seen the evolution. I've been a part of the evolution because I did start at hello, thank you for calling Latham Entertainment. Please hold. That's where I started in January 2004. And
Wow.
in I think 2009, it was when I started working with digital. And by 2011 was made partner. So I've been a part of the evolution. I'm proud to say
Yeah.
part of the Black women that are behind the scenes that are saying, hey, we're not going anywhere. You got to do more than make room because if you don't, we'll make a space of our own.
Hmm.
Which has been really exciting to see. And I've been fortunate to work with people as far as the people right beside me. So, my business partner who started off as my boss, Walter Latham, our partner, Robert Stein, people who have accepted that I had something great to offer and
Hmm.
were integral in saying to people, you better get used to it. Because I think we need that as Black women. It's
Hmm.
great that we blaze trails, but we also need some strong men to say, listen, enough is enough and speak up for us. And I was fortunate to have that.
That's really good. You made me think of something. And you talk about like women about not taking the back seat.
Right.
And a lot of people probably don't know this, but I truly admire women that know how to do business. And honestly, I prefer, oh, I prefer women over men when it comes to being able to make some of those high level executive decisions, just because the way they go about doing things.
Right.
I'll be honest. And if Mal, if you're listening, I have her on the SANE Show every now and then, and she was one of the people that helped me or encourage me to start the SANE Show, and she's really great to work with. And if a lot of times when I think about somebody that I can go to that I would want to really be a part of this, she's like the number one person because of how she thinks and her leadership skills and all that kind of stuff. So I totally agree. And you talk about we need more men to say, okay, enough is enough. I like to consider myself a part of that group.
I love
Like
it. Thank
I'm
you.
on y'all. I got y'all all day.
That is
So
awesome. You bring up an
another,
interesting point.
yeah.
You bring up an interesting point about the difference, your preference of working with women in business sometimes. And here's one thing that
Hmm.
I've noticed. I'll be on the call with all men, and the first few minutes, I always say men pee on a tree for the first few minutes of the conversation. Now we may do small talk. Women may say, how's your family, that kind of thing. But we get into business. I feel like personally, my experience
Hmm.
is that we get into the business faster because men start talking about who they met, who they work with, what they've done. They kind of go down their resume. And I think very rarely do we do that when
Hmm.
we just don't have time. It's like we just the facts. In fact, over the years, I've been told I was kind of cold because I'll get straight to the point. I'm like, okay, so what's next steps here? Like,
Oh, cold is good.
don't play around. Yeah, I'm like, don't play with me. Let's get down to the real deal. Let's get down to business. So before I get off a call, I'm always the one that says, okay, great. Everybody loves each other. That's wonderful. What's next step? Because a lot of times I think it's get off the phone. And no offense, man, but you can get off the phone with men and not be real sure what we're doing next. But
Hmm.
everybody seems to like each other. Whereas women,
Right.
you already know you got to send me this by this date. You got to do this by this date. We're like putting down
Right.
the deadlines.
Yeah. Because another thing too with some men is it's a thing of where there's a lot of ego.
Right, right,
And I know that I have an ego, but it can show at the wrong times, and so
right,
it's like I don't need to put myself in an environment where I'm surrounded by that, and then I'm with somebody else that's on the same wavelength. It's like, no, I need somebody that's gonna bring me, hey, Cliff, all right, we gotta focus and we gotta do this, we gotta execute.
right,
We got to get
right.
things done.
Exactly.
And what I appreciate about at least a lot of the women that I've had the opportunity to work with is how very methodical
Hmm.
and like it's like, look, we're going to do this. This is how it needs to be done.
Right,
Let's get it done.
right.
And not
Exactly.
taking offense to that because like look, that's the attitude that we all need to have at the end of the day when we're doing business. That's exactly how I am. And
Hmm. I
really quick,
appreciate that.
I want to touch on the creative part of it because when I look at a lot of the content, we talked about this too, as far as like, a lot of content that a lot of these women are putting out, the producers, the writers, just the creatives in general, also forcing us to have these conversations that we've been avoiding or that we just don't want to have,
Hmm.
and that's great because I can definitely tell you recently I've watched some things that were uncomfortable for me to watch, but it's like we need to look at this. All right. And it
Right.
was actually, I cannot think of the name of it right now. It was produced by a Black woman. And it's
Right.
like, this is the conversation we need to have, because we need to, these are things that we've been ignoring. We need to not only have the conversation, but we need to reflect about some of the things that are going on in society so that we can do better and that we can correct whatever needs to be corrected. Because
You know,
it
you're right.
go
You're
ahead.
right. No, I was going to say, I think one reason why women are more prone to tell the stories that have been covered up is
Hmm.
because we have been the stories that have been covered up. So
True.
now that we're coming out, I think you're just hearing a lot of the stories that resonate with us and that remind us of our own struggle. So with Ava's project that got so much attention about the guys that got the bad rap in New York. You
Oh
think
yeah.
about that resonated probably with her because here's a story that hadn't been told. Here are people whose stories hadn't been voiced before. And in a lot of ways, it's probably very similar to her experience as a woman, where
Hmm.
constantly someone else is telling your story and maybe not accurately. So I think one reason why you see women creatively forcing us to see things that we haven't wanted to see, hear things we haven't wanted to hear, is because they have been people that didn't want to be seen or heard. People didn't want to hear or see. And so I think it just makes sense that we're the ones saying, okay, now we're coming out full blast and we're bringing our stories with us.
Right.
Yeah.
And that actually speaks to my next point, as far as is not only are women making us have those conversations about the struggles of women, but they're also, because it's not like, okay, we just want to talk about what women are going through. No,
Right.
we're
Right.
not only are we going to have a conversation about what women are going through, we're going to have a conversation about minorities too.
Right.
Everybody is going to
Mm-hmm.
get their equal share,
Mm-hmm.
because when it's done right, because talking to people about feminism and stuff like that, I'm like, you have those people that feel some type of way about it. But I'm like, no, if it's done right, it's not just about that. Because then if you understand it and you listen to what some of these people that are, or what they are actually saying, it's not just them. It's
Right.
it's a whole
Exactly.
bunch of other groups that are going
Mhm.
through the same thing, and they're helping by bringing these conversations to the forefront and challenging us to not only have the conversation but to do something about it and to make a change for better.
I absolutely agree. I think with us, it's we've opened doors. Doors, some doors have been opened for us, and we're opening other doors. And we're saying, "Hey, now that it's open, we're waving our hands and waving, like you said, other minorities' stories that aren't just affecting women. All women of all come, all of you guys. Everybody who's been
Hmm.
pushed back is like
Right.
the door propped with our shoes, saying, "Hey,
Hmm.
hey, I've got it open. Come on through." And I think that's
Right.
what we're seeing. Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to go into our next topic. We're going to talk about mentorship, something Yolanda knows a lot about. Actually, we met through a program. You weren't my direct mentor, but through a friend of mine, you became my mentor too.
I
And
love.
and I'm so glad. I'm really glad that one, that we met, in that we were able to build a relationship, because you've made an impact and you still continue to make an impact on who I am as a person and as a professional operating within the entertainment business. So, just wanting to have a conversation about mentorship and how critical it is, and just a lot of those different aspects to the whole mentor mentee relationship. So, mentors are important,
Mhm.
that you and I both know. And I'll just want to say, for why I believe they're important, is because you learn a lot, right?
Mm.
And if done correctly, you get the right experience. And it's not just a thing of, because one of the things I learned is it's not just a thing of, help me do this or help me do that, or better yet, like having somebody or relying on somebody to more
Right.
so actually do the hard work for you. But better yet, or the whole idea of like teach a man to fish, like
Mm.
teach me,
Yes.
show me, or help me get some kind of experience, so then I can go out and do this on my own. And that's what I've been able to take from just my experience in, being a mentee, and having I have a lot of mentors.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much what it's been for me. I guess, what's your take on it as far as the importance of mentorship?
Yeah, I think I'm like you. I have a lot of mentors too. I have some of them don't even know that that's what they are to me. And I have a few people that would say, we're friends. I'm like, we're friends and you're my mentor. I
Right.
think mentors give perspective
Hmm.
that as the mentee you just don't have. So, I agree that as well as opening doors, I think a good mentor will often do that. And it's not always just an introduction, but it's
Hmm.
sometimes opening a door to a concept, an idea of something that the mentee wouldn't have thought of on their own, or maybe wouldn't have had the confidence to step out into on
Right.
their own. I think that's one thing a mentor does. A mentor kind of is your personal pep rally embodied.
Mm.
A mentor says, you can do this, you got this. And I think a good mentor also says, you dropped the ball here, you messed up here, you're dragging your heels here. A mentor will hold your feet to the fire. I think one thing that I have gained most from mentorship is just that relationship with someone who thinks bigger sometimes than even you do. And I'm a big thinker, but sometimes I'll limit myself. And I have a few mentors who will say, "Okay, you're limiting yourself right now. That's
Right.
you would tell someone else XYZ." I think sometimes a mentor is a mirror to who you want to be and who you're trying to be and who you're
Hmm.
portraying to your mentees. A
Hmm.
mentor will come and say, "Now, what would you tell one of your mentees?" And that's something I've got one mentor say, now if your mentee came to you saying this, what would you say? And she'll almost have me mentoring myself. So I
Right.
think that is a perspective is a big thing. And I think you and I talked about this before the show even started about how much you gain while you're mentoring. It's not
Hmm.
just a mentor is giving, giving, giving. I learned so much from my mentees. They'll tell me, for one, a lot of times my mentees are just much more courageous than I am, younger, braver, riskier. And I gained so much. I have one mentee that picked up and moved, and I encouraged it. But when she did it, it was like, wait, you're really gonna leave everything here and do that? I was so like hyped for her, but at the same time,
Hmm.
I was envious that I didn't have the guts to do what I had been encouraging her to do that she had taken me up on. And I've seen that several times where I've learned from mentees, wow, the courage, the ability to step out is just exciting to me. I learned so much from you guys.
Oh my goodness. You, it's so crazy. You say, okay, so I got a few things here, right? It reminds me, Jeff Bowen, we were
Mhm.
talking last, and one of the things he told me is like, I live vicariously through you.
Mm, mhm.
Watching you as young as you are, doing all these things. Yes, some of them are crazy. Yes, you get off track sometimes, but it's like just watching you still going after it. So that
Right.
part, yes. So being able, because I think that's what exactly again, that's what you were speaking to as far as like
Yes.
living vicariously through the people that you mentor. Now the other
Exactly.
part is because now that I'm getting experience and I have my peers and I have those who look up to me, and so I kind of mentor them to an extent. But like, yeah, I totally know what you mean when you talk about encouraging somebody to do something and then they do it
And
and
they
you
do
sit
it.
back and like, man, I wish I could have done that, but I'm glad you would keep doing it, like keep doing it.
Right.
you know yeah.
Exactly.
It's so funny how that is. So no, something else that you hit on too, as far as like, because we were talking about earlier the mentor mentee relationship and also reverse mentorship, and how you, because honestly, and that's what makes you a great mentor, is the ability to look at your mentee and see the things that they're doing and just being able to also take and learn from them,
Mhm.
and I guess apply that to yourself, because I do the same thing. It's like a lot of times when we talk about the different generations, right? Especially me wanting to be a parent in the future, I think about what the younger generation does, and me being at one point the youngest generation, and how it was with the boomers and the generation what X, and how what that relationship looked like, which it wasn't terrible. You have a lot of good people in these older generations, but I think it could have been better, obviously. And but when looking at the younger generation, I take what I learned from my experience with the older generation, and just looking at, okay, this is what we can do. Like, 'cause we, at the end of the day, we have to encourage the youth. and we have to be able to help show them the way. Because I'm a big believer in being able to take the best of the old, take the best of the new,
Mm,
and create the next big thing.
mm, mm-hmm.
Because it's almost like the thing of like if you don't know your past, you don't know your present. And as mentors, being able to take and learn from previous experiences, and also being able to kind of educate mentees on not only just based off experience but based off what history and things of that nature, and being
Right,
able to help cultivate their mind and be able to help gear them up to really, because it's like, yeah, you have potential, you have great ideas, but let me add something to that. All right, let me help you out
right.
here. And
Mm-hmm.
then doing that, it's like boom. Because I remember it was like the first time I sat down with Jeff after we met, and I'm like this, want to do tour promotions, and I'm sitting here thinking like I got the best ideas in the world. I'm the hottest thing out here. Ain't nobody done this before. And before I told him that though, we sat down and he's telling me all this stuff, and I'm sitting here like, oh, yeah.
Right, right,
Okay, I got a lot of learning to do.
right.
But it's those things that that make you step back and say, okay, for me as a mentee, it makes you step back and say, okay, all right, cool. I need to humble myself. I need to
Mm-hmm.
learn as much as I can. That way I can be able to get to that level and surpass that, and
Mm-hmm.
be able to take what's working now and be able to make it better for myself. So yeah, you hit on a lot of great things when you were talking about mentorship in the relationship between
Mm-hmm.
mentors and mentees. Okay, we're back. Now we're going to go ahead and hop into the interview. This is always a highly anticipated segment for me, because with the guests that I have on, there's always this you. It's always something interesting about people, and even though like you and I have spoken on numerous occasions, and I've
Right.
I've heard your story, and also still staying abreast on your journey, like it's always something interesting. So it always excites me to be able to interview my guests, so the listeners can learn about you and the things that you have going on in your journey, so that they can pretty much know just how cool you are. So if you could just give the listeners some insight into your time in the industry.
Yeah, yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, I kind of jumped into this in 2004, January 2004, and it was totally different from what I was doing before. So I came from human resources. I
Okay.
and thought I would do HR for the rest of my life. Loved it, and some things happened within my family that required a move for me. And when I made a move, it meant I needed a job.
Hmm.
and and a friend of mine mentioned this entertainment company that had an opening, and I'm thinking, well, why is it in North Carolina? Is it legit? Are they going to be around? Asked a friend of mine who was living in LA. I called her and said, have you ever heard of this company? And she goes, what, have you been underneath a rock? Yes. So I came in as junior level as you can be, like I said,
Hmm.
straight administrative assistant answering phones. And I thought to myself, I'm too smart for this. And this is no shade on that, on the field of administrative assistants, because they rock. But it was
Hmm.
just not what I thought I would be doing. It's just answering phones. I felt like I was more of a receptionist. I'm sorry. I feel like I just had too much to offer at the time to be just answering phones. And it was almost like what you said about being a mentee, where you think you know something and then you start doing it. You're like, oh, this ain't as easy as I thought. But I learned so much in that role after making a lot of mistakes and realizing, okay, I don't know everything. And just kind of went through the motions of paying my dues, I guess, if you will. So
Hmm.
I ended up becoming an executive assistant to the president, Walter Latham. And in that role, I mean, on every call. So I'm taking notes on every call. To this day, I have hundreds of notebooks with phone calls from everybody from the queens of comedy to the kings of comedy to agents and writers and animators, because I was on every call, every
Wow.
contract call, every negotiation call, every call with a lawyer. So I got a chance to hear every aspect of the business. the creative side of the business, the legal side of the business, the financial side of the business. I was in every meeting with the controller and the CPA. So I just got a chance to get a full panoramic view of the business. I mean, I would encourage, I know millennials love to start at the top, but there's just something powerful about starting in a place where you have to just learn. And so I did that. And then over time, my expertise, my knowledge, all that stuff started to come. Oh, you know how to do some other stuff. And I became president of the digital division because about 2009 is when we really started seeing a big digital evolution with our comedy, where people wanted to experience our comedy on the platforms like YouTube and all that. And they were starting to talk about paying for original content. And there was a little conversation about it, but very indirect and very like behind the scenes. This isn't real. We don't know, but maybe we'll pay for original content. And eventually they did. And we were one of the few Black channels that were in that first run of original content providers. And so now I've been doing this for 15 plus years, and am excited to say that now I'm not just on the call taking notes. I'm on the call doing the call, and it's really great. I took my first LA trip a few years ago by myself and took meetings with Showtime and some other providers at the time, and it was just to see the growth in myself. At first I was pumped. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to LA by myself. I'm about to do this. And then I'm on the plane like, I'm going to go to LA by myself. I'm about to do this. But I got a chance to see that all those notes that I was taking, all those calls that I was listening on, and all those great conversations I got a chance to hear and experience. It was now I could see why. I could see why I had to hear them. I could see why I had to read all those notes and read every agreement and every contract, because it got to a point where it was almost like, we don't need to send this to a lawyer. Let Yolanda take a look at it and then send it. So by the time things went to the lawyer, it had been, I had briefed it, drafted it twice, and then all they had to do was proof it and say, yeah, it's legally sound. So I am really now the business side of things. Walter's definitely the creative, and I'm the one that probably blows his candle out and says, that, come on, how much is that going to cost? But it works.
See that
really
right there? See, that's what I like.
It works really well, because sometimes the candle needs to be blown out for a moment because it might burn the whole house down. And then sometimes he says, no, look, I got it. It makes sense. Figure it out, Adam.
She said it might burn the whole house down. You a trip. I want to ask you, I guess I really appreciate you illustrating that journey. I can just see it. And it's always refreshing to hear, because no matter who I talk to, you got to pay your dues, you got to work your way up, and you will, and if you stick to it and you commit, you will get to where you are today.
Right.
So one of the things I want to ask you is, what have you learned most
Oh my gosh.
from doing this?
That's tough. I always tell people that in this experience, I learned more than I learned with my fancy paper, because an undergraduate degree from Carolina and an MBA from Duke could not teach me was what experience could. There were some things that I would hear on calls that I couldn't have paid to have learned this in a classroom. Like, nobody could have taught this. And there's been one thing is to be careful with accepting yeses or no's, because we always hear don't take no for an answer, keep pushing. Well, sometimes a yes is not the right yes, and I've definitely learned that in this business. There was an opportunity that came our way that was very lucrative. The names involved were great, but the integrity of those names to me was questionable. And when we sat down and we talked about it, it wasn't worth the yes. It just wasn't worth being in business with people that we were going to later possibly regret being in business with. And so I've learned that sometimes the yes, you need to walk away from it. And sometimes you got to push the no. And I remember one call in particular, we were on a call with YouTube, and they offered an amount for original content. They said that was the max they were given to any channel. And so most of us on the call were like, cool, great, we'll take it. Walter says no and throws another number out. And we're all gasping like, he about to make us lose this whole thing. And they said yes. I've learned that sometimes people, they don't know what they want. I heard somebody say this recently. People don't know what they like what they know. And that was really like, oh, wow.
I need to
Like
write
it
that down.
resonated. Yeah, that really resonated with me because sometimes people will offer you something because they think that's what makes sense. And it takes you saying, no, that maybe makes sense for this person and that person. It doesn't make sense for me. And here's why. And that's one thing I've learned from this time with Walter Latham, with Robert Stein, our partners, is that you've got to know what your content, what your brand, what your product, if you're the brand, what you're worth. Because if you don't, someone else will quickly assign a value to you, which may be much lower than what it should be. And that's one of the greatest lessons that I've learned. And another one is sometimes done is just better than perfect. I am a overthinker and over everything. So I will
Hmm.
read it 10 times before I hit send. And there was one time when I cost us a great deal of money because I kept looking at this proposal and I kept looking at it and kept working on it until I missed the deadline. And by the time we were able to get it in, they had already given their best spots out. And I learned
Mm.
if I had turned it in, submitted it much earlier, we would have been on that first set and gotten a much bigger dollar, bigger payout. So sometimes you just got to go with it and stop overthinking it. They talk about the paralysis of overanalysis that I've
Right.
been a victim of that many times. And in this business, I've learned that can hurt you as much as being not cautious enough. You think about being reckless, what that can do. What overthinking can cost you just as much as reckless can.
That's very true. That
Yeah.
is very true. So you recently had a new calling,
Yes.
went through divinity school.
Hmm.
Now, talk to me about that. So how that came to be and
Yeah.
where
It
you
doesn't
at?
fit, does it?
Go ahead.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to fit, does it, Cliff? It's like, how does Gandhi and Bernie Mac fit in the same place? Um, It's very interesting. I've been involved in some level of ministry for 20 plus years. Right, it started off as Sunday school teacher at church and just have remained involved in different ways over the years. And 2 years ago, I was minding my own business, and I really felt strongly I was hearing is go back to school. And I'm like, I see, like, come on now, really? Go back to school?
Hmm.
I think I'm gonna do this. And it was like, go back to divinity. And I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do with a divinity degree? I don't need a degree to do what I do. And at the time, I was already like speaking at church and all that. So I'm like, well, I don't even need it to do what I do at church. But I felt God saying I needed it to be better equipped and to understand the scripture, the context, and on all that, so that when I'm speaking, I really know what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about something I heard. I'm talking about something I really, really understand. And so that led me to a Master Divinity emphasis on Christian leadership, which I will finish in May. I'm in my final semester right now.
Whoop,
And
whoop.
it's been an exciting journey. And I always tell people it's been way harder than MBA and undergrad for sure. It's been kicking my behind, but it has been a great experience. I've learned a lot about myself, a lot about balance, a lot about discipline, and a lot about how in the African American community, so much of what we teach and talk about is what we've heard, not so much what we know. And so I've started to read and understand things in a different way. And some things I'm like, I don't think we've had it right all this time when we've said
Hmm.
this and said that. So that's kind of what that's been. But let me tell you what the interesting connection is. So over the years, even though I work in a very secular field, I've had the opportunity to minister, if you will, to people that I would not have had a chance to meet if it wasn't for working in entertainment. And I have found that people are searching for something, regardless of if they have plenty of money and celebrity or if they have nothing and no name.
Hmm.
Everybody's kind of searching for something. And there have been times when I've had the opportunity to offer a perspective, an outlook, a level of inspiration, positivity that people needed at that time. Because yeah, they maybe were making money and maybe were on TV, but there was something going on in their family or in their health or just a crisis of faith. So I think over time there has been this marriage of entertainment and ministry. Doesn't seem like a likely fit, but it has definitely been a divine fit.
I'm so happy to hear that. It makes me think about like it just sounds like one of those things where as you go through life and you really it doesn't surprise me, because it's almost like my pastor at my church, where like, he was doing pharmaceutical sales, and now he's in the pulpit preaching. As you just go through life, and you have your experiences, and you just have these callings, like
Yes.
these true, what might be the true calling at that, and go with it,
And it's amazing what comes out of it.
exactly. Well, it was definitely fun having you on.
Well, I agree. I'm honored too. I mean, thank you so much for thinking about me. I was thinking when you said how cool I am, I'm like, shoot, I hope I don't let the people down.
No, trust me, I you're one of the mentors I talk about a lot, and that's a beautiful thing about having this platform, because I know a lot of cool people, and I've in being able to be a part of the entertainment business, I've been able to meet a lot of cool individuals. And again, I talk about a lot of people, and like you and Jeff are the ones I talk about the most,
That's
as
heavy.
well as my
Yeah.
cousin John. Shout out to him. It's just cool, having these conversations that we have off the record and
Hmm.
during our phone calls. Is just being able to have people like you on, and to be able to let people hear for themselves. Like, look, told you she was cool.
Right,
Like,
right.
and because it's always a lot to be gained having these kinds of conversations. So really, that's why I have people like you on the show, that not only I can take something from it, because I definitely got something from it, but other people can take something from it too now. So kind of my
So
way of sharing what I have.
thank you so
um,
much. And I wanted to say
yeah,
just in closing that I think this conversation is an example of when mentorship is done the right way. Because here now you've brought an
preach.
opportunity to me. I mean, I think this is a great example. This is a testimony. And this is why it's important to be mentored and to mentor.
Hmm. Yep,
Yeah.
that is the truth. Hey, really quick, so the listeners can be able to stay abreast on what you
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
have going on over there. You can just let them know where they can find you guys, and also find any content, and if you guys have anything out there that the listeners should check out.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you put in Walter Latham, the producer, on Facebook, you'll find all of our great content from the original Kings, the Queens of Comedy, Bad Boys of Comedy, Latin Kings of Comedy. If you go on YouTube, youtube.com/Walter Latham, you'll find some great longer form content there. You can also find us on Hulu. We've got content on Netflix, and 2020 is going to be a big year. Believe it or not, the original Kings turned 20 in 2020. And
My
so just
goodness.
stay tuned for that. Yeah, the movie was released in October 2020 so it's huge to think about how we've been saying him downstairs now for 20 years, which is an amazing thing. It speaks to the
That's a
quality
classic.
of
Yeah.
that brand. Yeah. So
Hmm.
2020 is going to be a big year. A lot of great projects just waiting to come out in 2020. Also, if you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, I am Yulonda1, Yulonda1. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And to the listeners, if you guys didn't catch that, we got a rewind button. So rewind and take notes,
Awesome.
and definitely go check out the content. And if you haven't seen the original Kings of Comedy, I'm
Go,
assuming you live
go
under a
watch
rock for
it.
one.
Right. Go watch
And you gotta watch it all. Not just that, but all their content. A lot of great
it.
content that they've been
Yes.
putting out over the years and continue to put out. So definitely go check them out. And again, go follow us, the SANE Show, Instagram, Twitter, SANE_show, SANE_show, and then Facebook, the SANE Show. Thank you again, Yolanda. Thank you again,
Uh,
listeners. And this is the SANE Show, the show about nothing and everything. And until next time, we're out.